What is extraordinary is the expert appointed by the government to investigate concluded patients were killed by staff.
I discovered in the records this phrase, "please make comfortable." And I think that's described for me what seemed to have been going on.
So they were killed by the hospital?
That was what I thought.
Hello guys, how you doing? Hope you're doing very well. This is just a quick video to highlight some of the problems that are going on in this country that have been going on under the veil for years, decades even. I've got to give someone the ultimate kudos here. That is a man called Great Brit. He sent me a link in order to do a stream, a topic. It's something that got his goat when he'd seen it. To be fair, when I seen it, I could not believe it.
This is the story of a community hospital with the darkest of secrets. Hundreds of people had their lives shortened here.
But due to time constraints, I didn't get round to addressing the issue. As recently as yesterday, as you do, you go about your business. Next thing you know, I get an alert on my phone. And what it was telling me, it was a story that was about Gosport hospital scandal. Now, same again, this happens to be the exact same story that Great Brit was informing me about. This hospital was known as a recuperation hospital.
Many of those who died went to Gosport for rehabilitation after operations, like Ethel Thurston, who'd had her hip done. She'd been there 4 weeks when her niece visited.
First time I saw her in Gosport, she was fine, but they said she hadn't been eating. And we laughed and we joked, and she was fine.
Dr. Barton saw Ethel the next day and prescribed a massive dose of diamorphine. She wrote,
"Further deterioration. Please keep comfortable. I am happy for nursing staff to confirm death."
The following day I went, and there she was laying completely white as a sheet, comatose, as far as I thought she was comatose, and she took her last few breaths while I was there. It was a big dose. She'd never had it before. They must have known that it would kill her.
I'm sure there were people admitted there for many different reasons. I'm sure there were people there that were admitted because of terminal care. But many of the cases that have come up within this hospital, it turns out that they were there for recuperation only.
people like war veteran Robert Wilson. He had health problems, but in 1998 went to hospital with a broken shoulder.
He was funny. He was hilarious at times, you know, like telling his stories of the Navy and D-Day.
Like many other elderly patients, Robert was sent to Gosport War Memorial Hospital to recuperate.
I thought he was getting better, and I thought, well, a few days in another place, he would be home, sort of thing, you know. But it didn't work out that way.
In order to recuperate, they were sent to that hospital. The only problem is that they never came out again. Now, we're not just talking about the odd one individual, which is bad enough, but we are talking hundreds and hundreds of people.
Robert's death was not a one-off. In the 90s, many patients died here after being given strong painkillers in large doses. An official investigation found between 450 and 650 patients had their lives shortened.
That for whatever reason, their injuries did not justify the treatment, the medical treatment that they were given. As a result, they died in hospital.
Some nurses did think patients were being killed. We found their police statements. They've never been reported before.
It seemed most of the patients were going on drivers even when they were not in pain.
I don't recall anyone going on to a syringe driver who did not die.
I think that diamorphine was used to keep the waiting lists down.
It got to the stage that every time Dr. Barton came to the annex, I would think to myself, who's going to die now?
What would that be like? as a son, as a daughter, to believe that you're doing the right thing by allowing your mother, your father, your grandfather, your grandmother to go into the hospital where you believe that they're going to get the utmost care in order to recuperate them and bring them back out into society as a better individual. I can resonate with this. I can. My father died in hospital, Ancoats Hospital. The problem is what he died of was nothing to do with what he went in for. He died of pneumonia. The family and I are convinced that the pneumonia was contracted whilst being in the hospital. We've got no proof to suggest it, but he didn't go in with pneumonia. He went in with totally different symptoms. That's just one case, you know, but to be given a drug so lethal that you haven't got a chance once you're on it, you know, the medical professionals say once you get on this driver, that's it. It's classed as terminal, so you're going to fade out. Why was that decision made?
He was put on diamorphine, or medical heroin. Now, Robert was in pain, but these were huge doses, continuously pumped into him by this device, a syringe driver. He became unconscious. 2 days later, he was dead.
Do you lose confidence in the system? When that happens? When you're in your eldest years? You expect? Is it too much to expect? Just to be cared for, to be looked after? You're being admitted for recuperation, not terminal. So is it too much to expect? For all that to go wrong, essentially, and them dying, to be killed.
Hospital managers and consultants failed to stop it.
The report said that in here, there was a total disregard for human life. It said there was a culture of shortening lives.
Because that essentially what's happened here. We're not talking about mistakes. We're talking about deliberate acts, possibly to keep the numbers down, possibly to subdue unruly patients because they're somewhat confused and maybe angry at the treatment they're receiving. This investigation needs to happen to find out exactly what were the motives on all of these deaths. When the doctor was confronted, the doctor in this documentary was not willing to participate, not willing to answer questions. All this doctor wanted to do was divert, get out the way, didn't want to address it. As far as she was concerned, she was doing the right thing.
Dr. Burton, hi, it's Richard Bilton from BBC News.
Dr. Barton goes into her garage.
Could I ask you a quick question, please?
But her husband comes out.
Sir, can I just ask, I'm from BBC Panorama.
Oh, I know who you are.
Yeah, and I wrote and asked some questions and Dr. Barton didn't answer them, so it'd be great if I could...
This is all so you can just say you gave us every opportunity to talk and we didn't.
No, I asked you questions which I hoped you'd answer. And now I'd like to put those questions to Dr. Barton.
It's a very complicated story.
And we've not heard from her.
And the advice we've had is not to speak to the media.
Why did so many people lose their lives in that hospital? Have their lives shortened? They were killed.
Oh, you're suggesting that she murdered them now, are you? Is that what you're suggesting?
Oh, I'm suggesting that
you said they were killed.
400 people had their lives shortened, which I think is killed, isn't it? Isn't it? 400 people had their lives shortened.
Shortened as opposed to killed. So why hasn't she not been charged with murder? Why hasn't she been charged with murder then?
I don't know.
All right, well then perhaps you have to address these questions to the police.
And since 1988, no action's been taken. Is that neglect? Is that willful? Should nothing be done there? This doctor is in a position of trust. This doctor is in a position of authority. Now, it's very evident that there's clear cases of compartmentalisation here as well. So a lot of people were just following orders. A lot of people might not have known the protocol, but still could see that there was something wrong.
The deaths should have been stopped long before the police became involved. Back in 1991, right at the start of the killing, a group of nurses warned about what was happening on the wards. They said, not all patients given diamorphine have pain. The drug regime is used indiscriminately. that patients' deaths are sometimes hastened unnecessarily. The nurses were right on every count, but when they put their concerns to Dr. Barton and the hospital managers, they were told they were wrong. The nurses were sent back to the wards and hundreds more people were killed.
I think that's a very dangerous information to ignore.
Why?
Well, people are going to come to harm as a result, so I don't know how to defend it.
But because it meant addressing these problems that a superior has caused, maybe that has meant that they've reconsidered whether they want to rock the boat. You know that doctors do a fantastic sterling job around the country. And with any profession, you're going to get good, the bad and the ugly. But with doctors, they have to adhere to an oath, do no harm, not take them out. It's an oath where they will try the utmost to their professional capabilities to ensure to safeguard life. But we know now with the pharmaceutical industry that that is not always at the top of the agenda. We know with the depopulation programme that's in place, the system unfortunately will find ways of cutting down the numbers. It's a bitter pill to swallow. It's not something a lot of people want to consider, particularly when you're putting your elder family members in the care of these doctors, of the hospitals, of the NHS. What's going on? I don't know. I mean, you'd have to talk to each and every staff member as to why they allowed it to happen, as to what their motives was. Not their fault. They want the perpetrator of the crime. But you can see from this video that there's some elements of complicity between many different professionals within this hospital when it was not justified medically, when these patients were not terminal, when in some cases there was nothing wrong with these patients.